covering the stories that impact your life, your town, your state, and your future. This is the Means Report with your host, Brad Means.
Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the Means Report. We certainly appreciate you spending part of your day with us, where today we are catching up with an old friend who's going to be talking about a lot of new topics in the headlines. We were just discussing how this is an appropriately timed interview because there's so many things that he has expertise on and insight on, and we're going to cover that today, really ripped straight from the headlines. We're going to cover the political scene in Augusta, the mayor recently getting a vote thanks to a referendum. Voters said yes, please give Augusta's mayor the privilege of voting on all commission matters. We'll talk about helping leaders, not just here at home, but nationwide, get along, how to bridge the divide between them. And then, of course, we'll wrap up the Means Report with ways that you can stay in touch. It is easy, and we will show you at the end of this broadcast. But first, let's welcome back former Augusta Mayor Deke Copenhaver. Served 2.5 terms in the top job in the Garden City. And he is now, ever since he left office, an author, a podcaster, a speaker, you name it. He's all over the place. And I appreciate you taking the time to come back.
I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up.
That's good, though. I mean, you're like diversifying, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Many irons in the fire. I want to start, though, with something that has concerned a lot of people over the past couple of years. That's your health. And I checked my notes and couldn't believe that it's been 13 months, Deke, since you rang the bell to signal the end of your cancer treatment. How's it gone since then?
So we went back for my 4-month checkup to MD Anderson the beginning of June. Still cancer-free for 13 months now. You know, and I'm here again, I'm a testimony to God's grace because I never had any side effects from the treatment or anything. I never felt bad, but He's given me a great testimony, but it's, His grace and the power of prayer.
Day to day, you feel fine, your energy level, etc.?
I go to the Y every day, my workout routine has not changed at all, but just to all your viewers, just thank you for your prayers. They made the difference.
Well, I could feel them for you as well, especially when the news first broke. Everyone in this community was trying to lift you up. I'm glad you're doing well. Last time you were here, you were with Mayor Garnett Johnson. Y'all were talking about this push to get people to vote, to say yes, to give Augusta's mayor the right to vote. That was an overwhelming success. So I guess the first question for that topic is, how do you feel that something you worked so hard on passed?
I'm excited about it, and the mayor and I make a great team. We're both very competitive, strong grassroots engagement throughout that campaign. But it was positive, inclusive, uplifting, focused on bringing people together on common ground. 74%, given the political climate that we're in, that's pretty much unheard of. When I told that to a friend of mine in Texas, he's like, man, that's like Putin numbers. That's like third world dictators that have Ponzi elections don't get that high of a percentage.
It's huge, 76%. Was it difficult? I remember seeing the ads on television with you, Bob Young, Hardy Davis, Mayor Garnett Johnson. Was it difficult to get the former mayors together?
No, not at all. And that's when I made the point. I think that's what people in the U.S. want to see, because you had a Democrat or Republican. I'd say Garnett and I are both more independent, but we don't agree on everything politically, but we could agree on this issue that it was time that the mayor got a full and equal vote.
Why do you think people supported that so overwhelmingly? What do you think makes voters sit at home and say, yeah, he or she does deserve a vote?
Because we did, grassroots outreach to all parts of the community. The commercials were young, old, black, white, Latino. But it was uplifting, and people, particularly when we first made the announcement and had 4 mayors standing there, people were like, man, the imagery of that was just so powerful. But it's funny, people are coming up to me going, there's just a different feel to Augusta now. I feel like we're just, we're on this really big roll, and that's great. And but I would tell people, I'm like, look, I know you're probably not excited about national politics, but local politics, the actions of your local government have more of an impact on your daily lives than anything that happens in Washington. So we can't fix Washington, but let's start to fix Augusta, and we did.
All right, so let's look forward at potential issues that could impact our daily lives that the commission will vote on. I think Mayor Johnson's first vote was whether or not to go into legal session.
Yeah.
So not something super, sexy, but at least, he got that first vote out of the way. Do you think we'll see more significant, impactful votes from the mayor going forward?
I do. I think it'll avoid the 5-4-1 abstention issue. But it's really, we have a chance now. They're bringing on the Carl Vinson Institute of Government to review the charter from top to bottom. They're in the process of establishing a charter review commission. So these are all things that needed to be done, set up a long time ago. So many people say, well, we have to have a committee. I'm like, I believe in bringing in the Vinson Institute to begin with, because they don't have skin in the game. It's not going to be politicized.
I want to stay on this vote thing, and forgive me, we're going to get to other issues, but people have a lot of questions about it. So is this new setup abstention proof?
I don't know that anything is. I mean, I think it's as close as we're going to get for right now. And, as they review the charter, there could be recommendations. Maybe they say that the mayor doesn't need a vote. Maybe they just outlaw abstentions. But you and I discussed the last time, in North Augusta, every city council person runs at large. I would love to see them make that recommendation, because it creates a sense of accountability with all commissioners, that it's not just, well, I'm serving my district, because the way the government is set up, it's like, well, if you do something for downtown, you got to do my district.
That's right.
That tit for tat just hinders progress tremendously.
Why do you think, and based on the outcome of the vote, there wasn't a lot of opposition, but why do you think there were opponents to the Augusta's mayor having a vote?
I spoke at an event in Athens many years ago, and somebody said, should more city counties consolidate in Georgia? And somebody said, well, then you've got constitutional officers having to give up their power. I said, politics at its base is not about black and white, Democrat, Republican, male and female. It's about power and control. Once you give somebody a little of it, good luck taking it away from them. Mm-hmm. So there were a group of people, and one who shall remain nameless, one member of the opposition called somebody that I met at the Cancer Walk, ironically, and said, you need to vote. I would encourage you to vote no. And the guy said, why would I do that? He said, because if the mayor gets a vote, that upsets the power structure.
Right.
And so the guy said to this individual, what have you ever done for Augusta? I'm voting yes.
So if the power structure has been upset, or at the very least altered, do you think that might lead to government leaders in Augusta getting along better in the future, because they know they can't just push things through?
No, I do. And it's all, I tell people I had to work with the commission and establish relationships, but I was fortunate to have a commission that it wasn't always pretty, but they were willing to work with me.
Right.
And it's a team game.
Why was that? Why? Because I think that's advice and information that we could use today. Yeah. Why were they willing to work with you?
Brad, I think, so I ran the green space program for the city for 4 years, a land buying program. So I've been able to build consensus on the commission around that one issue for 4 years. So I knew all the players. I'd worked with the administrator, Fred Russell, our planning director, George Patty, I'd worked with. So I knew all the players and had built consensus around that one issue. The chances of that ever happening again, that the stars had to align on that. The fix had to be structural.
A couple more questions on this topic. First of all, do you think that we might see the real benefits of Augusta's mayor having a vote in the next administration? Because I get the feeling sometimes that people think this was a Garnett Johnson thing. This was him trying to get a vote versus, no, it's the office of the mayor having a vote. Do you think people might say, okay, we'll like this more when you're gone because we don't know who the next person's going to be?
No, I don't think so. I think when people see the way it works, it was not a power grab by any means.
Right.
And as the mayor, I think, said last time we were here, the state government said, we can get this done for you and we don't have to go to a vote of the people. And he said, no, I want it to be voted on by the people. So I have a lot of respect for him for doing that. But no, it's not it's just an efficient and effective government move. And we haven't updated our charter in nearly 30 years.
Right.
So yes, if you shift some things around Are some people going to lose a little bit of their control? Yes, potentially, but you know what we did? We educated, we informed, we engaged, and we empowered the people of Augusta, 74, 76%. But we put the power back where it belongs, in the hands of the people, by giving them a voice in the way their local government operates.
One more question on the local scene. We'll spend our next segment talking about your efforts to help our nation, really. Yeah. And the question is about the sheriff's race. We had a 3-term sheriff unseated by a newcomer to the political arena. What do you think?
You know, I will tell you, Sheriff Roundtree is a friend of mine. You know, I've met Gino as well. You know, sometimes change is good. I'll tell you that. And I've heard that there are a lot of people that will come around the sheriff-elect. The one thing that concerns me that I was telling somebody the other day is, you know, to have a lame duck mayor for, you know, however many months, or a commissioner, we've never had a sheriff that's basically a lame duck through the end of the year. Yeah. And to me, that's just a really strange situation to be in. You would hope that they would work together. That's my great hope. But you don't want any gaps in law enforcement during that time.
What a great point. There was a meeting, I wish I could recall the topic of it, but there was a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and part of it was law enforcement related, and I did see the Sheriff Richard Roundtree and the Sheriff-elect Gino Brantley in the same room, so maybe they are kind of getting together here for this home stretch.
Well, that is my great hope, because at the end of the day, and I've shared with you, you know, I'm a literalist. So when I was in office, I was a public servant. So my view was, well, I'm there to serve the public. I'm not there to serve political parties or special interest groups. And so I think we need to get back to that. All elected officials, locally and nationally, you are a public servant first, politician second, in my book.
We're going to talk more about that as this edition of the Means Report continues. Former Augusta Mayor Deke Copenhaver is our guest, making a mark now on the national scene with his efforts. We'll tell you about those when the Means Report continues. Welcome back to the Means Report. Former Augusta Mayor Deke Copenhaver is our special guest, and as he told us at the top of the first segment, he's very busy since he left the mayor's office, and even more so of late. I was going to start with Starts With Us, the national organization you're a part of to help folks get along better, really, especially leaders. But then we talked before the broadcast about the Forward Party and you being newly appointed to the board of directors there. Tell me about the Forward Party and what your role will be.
You know, so the Forward Party was started 2 years ago by Andrew Yang, former Democratic candidate for president, but Christine Todd Whitman, who's the former Republican governor of New Jersey, is also part of the leadership. It's people that basically used to be leaders in both parties, sort of coming together and saying, we need a viable alternative to the two-party system. So they've asked me to come on the advisory board. I happily did it. So my role, part of what my role is, you know, here in Augusta, we provided in 4 elections I was a part of an alternative to the status quo of negative politics as usual. So 3 elections as mayor, then plus Augusta Stronger Together, an average win of 64.75%. So that's over 19 years. That shows me that people will go to a viable alternative, but they've connected me with young Fordists, which are basically their chapters on college campuses throughout the nation. They're growing, and in high schools. But it's basically these kids that want to get into public service that just don't want anything to do with how negative and just, toxic the two-party system has gotten.
What does a Forward Party candidate do going forward? Let me just be a total pessimist and say there's not going to be a Forward Party president in the near future.
No, I think that's true.
Right. So is their role to disrupt the candidacy of a Democrat or Republican so that the other major party candidate can ascend?
No, none whatsoever, because basically there's a big focus. So you do not have to, declare fealty to one side or the other. There are 4 Democrats, there are 4 Republicans running at the state level and the national level, and then there are people just running as forwardists. But it's not adherence. It's not as rigid basically both parties now are so controlled by the extremes. It's like, well, if you don't believe in these three things on either side, then you're not with us. And I think there's so much room for disagreement and for discussion, but just the way things have become so polarized, I don't think either party, either legacy party is really doing that. When you work in bipartisan fashion, you're demonized for it, and I'm like, that's crazy. You know, how do you get anything done?
Well, so does this interfere with or perhaps add to your work with Starts With Us, which is all about bridging that divide?
No, that's how I connected with the Forward Party. Because Lindsay Drath, the CEO, is actually a founding member of partner with Starts With Us as well. But it's, you know, there are 500 bridging organizations nationwide. This is the first sort of foray into politics, but people get it nationally that this is not sustainable. You know, what we're seeing, just the negative inflammatory rhetoric. I mean, look at what happened with our former president, an assassination attempt. And I'm like, so I hear all these politicians saying, we need to really dial down the inflammatory rhetoric. But I'm like, show me, walk it, model it for me. Don't just say that.
Well, that temperature was turned down after the assassination attempt for like a minute. And then it amped back up. So what's the first step toward getting both sides to say, we're going to walk the walk? We are going to turn it down.
You know, and that's a difficult thing for me to, because it seems like it's so built around demonizing the other side.
Right.
You know, and I'm like, I pray for former President Trump and his campaign every day, and I pray for President Biden and his administration, because, you know, and I will be perfectly honest, I'm not excited about the presidential race. I mean, I feel like, you know, can we get some younger, you know, forward-thinking candidates? But, you know, you got to respect the office. But it just seems like there's just no respect in treating people with dignity and respect. That's one of the principles of the Forward Party, to treat everybody with dignity and respect, to build from the grassroots up, not the top down, to maintain character and ethics in the candidates. You know, it's all the things that we used to kind of consider about statesman-like leadership that we're not seeing in partisan politics now.
Do you think, and I know it's early with your association with the Forward Party, but do you think young people will buy into this? Because I think I listened to what you're describing, and I'm thinking some of them might say, Deke, I'd love to roll with you on this, but my mom and dad are going to get mad at me.
No, you know, and that's the thing to me is, you know, I grew up identifying myself as a Republican. My mom was a liberal Democrat, my dad a conservative Republican. And then somewhere along the way, I'm like, I don't, particularly as they became more polarized, I'm like, I don't know that the extremes on either side represent me, but I think there's a swath of people out there that are not satisfied, you know, old and young, with what we're getting from the two-party system. So I think probably a lot of moms and dads will say, I wish that had been around when I was your age.
Let me stick with your Forward Party efforts and your Starts With Us efforts and talk about social media. Because when you talk about social media, you picture the people you're trying to reach. What are your thoughts on that? It seems like it can be such a negative influence.
I love that you asked that question. So this being the first campaign I've ever run, I like to experiment with things. So I primarily used LinkedIn to educate and inform voters. You know, it's not the extremes on LinkedIn. It's very professional. It was so effective. Like, so during the campaign, I would hashtag and I would tag people leading up. But then in the final days, I just didn't have time to do that. But I'd built up such a following around the campaign, I didn't have to do that anymore. So my posts the day before the election on May 20th, they were up, their engagements were up by 200%. So I'm like, if you're going to go where the, you know, level-headed people are, LinkedIn is the place to do it. But that is something I will teach these younger people too. You know, so many politicians, I think, use, you know, Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or X or whatever it's called, because that can be used to inflame the base. You know, so I don't see politicians really using LinkedIn effectively. But that gets through to my audience for sure.
Do you think that social media is an effective way to gauge the climate in this country? You mentioned level-headed people, and sometimes I think that most level-headed people probably avoid social media.
I agree.
I will get off Twitter in the morning just for the duration of one cup of coffee, and be infuriated for no reason at all?
No, I've pretty much died. I'm still on Instagram. I do Facebook, not Twitter or X or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that really highlights the extremists. And I think we've given these extremists a megaphone through social media. But if you're out there engaging with the people on the street, I told you for a film project we did with Starts With Us, I went to our farmers market and interviewed people for 5.5 hours. 1,000 people, diverse crowd. Are we divided as a nation? If so, why? To a degree, people said, we don't want to be divided. And no offense to the media, but they said it tends to be the media and politicians.
It does, the national media.
Yeah, well, the national media, and social media too. I just don't, when I'm out there interacting at the grassroots level throughout the nation, I don't sense this animosity and this awful divide.
We have a couple of minutes left. What about faith, church? Can that play a role? Do young people know what church is anymore?
They do, and actually, I've got a lot of friends in Gen Z. They're starting to go back to churches, usually non-denominational, but I'm like, okay, my faith, I'm a Christian, I don't begrudge anybody their faith tradition, but that campaign that we just did, Augusta Stronger, it was spirit-driven kingdom building because I believe we serve a uniting God that wants people to come together. So faith plays a role in everything I do, and I think young people are starting to come back to it, which I love to see, but it's just difficult. Sometimes they don't perceive faith as cool. So I've got a couple that are friends of mine that are a musical duo out of Brooklyn. So they're in their 30s, they're blowing up nationwide, they tour Europe, but they felt called in 2016, they're called the Bergamot, to get in a Volvo with 230,000 miles on it, tour the country, all 50 states, promoting unity through their music, having people of all political persuasions, all walks of life, sign their thing. They did a documentary that was nominated for an Academy Award last year.
Say the name of the group again.
The Bergamot. Look them up. And it's The State of the Unity is the film. But I'm like, that these two awesome musicians felt called to jump in a Volvo station wagon, and for 8 years, I'm like, that's pretty cool to me.
Yeah.
And they're people of faith. So. And I've got an author out of Austin, Texas. It's like Christian hippie dude, but yeah, I personally think that faith is very cool. It's not just boring and Melba and everything.
Right. No, I think it's cool as well, and I'm glad we'll end on that. I think it's a good place to wrap it up for this time. But as I said at the beginning, I know how busy you are, and I appreciate you.
Man, it is always a pleasure to be with you. Coming through the newsroom, it's like coming home.
Yeah, y'all should see it. The Channel 6 folks love Deke Copenhaver. He's been on the Means Report. He's been a great guest for us over the years, up to and including today. When we come back, how you can help us get more great guests like former Mayor Copenhaver in a moment.